All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Divers Getting Coffee. My name is Ed, your Minister of Adventures, and today's special guest is Caitlin McCall, a scuba instructor, scuba diver, uh, marine conservationist, and social media strategist. Welcome aboard, Caitlin. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you? I was just double checking and make sure I sent you the right information. Like, oh, did I send the wrong meeting invite?
I was actually grabbing myself a coffee because I went diving this morning. So I'm like, I'm beat.
I hear you. That's awesome. Yeah, I saw that you went out today. How was that?
It was good. It was really good. I was pleasantly surprised.
Nice. You're enjoying moving to Fort Lauderdale and being so close to accessible diving spots now, huh?
Yes. Yeah, I've done more diving like in the last month than I did the whole year I was in St. Petersburg. So
That's awesome. Well,
yeah.
thank you for joining today, and thank you for coming on to enjoy this chat. So cheers to another episode of Divers Getting Coffee.
Yeah, cheers.
You are a marine conservation mentor, scuba instructor, social media strategist. What do you not do?
Sleep. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Try to combine all of my skills.
And that's amazing because it shows that you're living your lifestyle. You're living your life, following your passions, and doing what you enjoy. And things are actually very useful for not just the ocean, but for humans as well. Because in my opinion, I kind of feel like we need the ocean more than the ocean needs us. Because there's different schools of thoughts, but the ocean was there before we came into the picture. And if we ruin it so badly that we get eliminated, the ocean will find a way to survive. But we kind of depend on that way more. So
Yeah, definitely.
Let's get it started. Is there anything else you wanted to add to your introduction? I could go on and on about it, but better to hear from you than for me
Oh,
doing the spiel.
I don't know. I think that's adequate. I think it's more than adequate. Yeah, I've kind of recently, I guess in the last month or so, really streamlined what I'm doing to marine conservation mentoring, just because that's what everyone is constantly asking me about.
Hmm.
In my messages, my emails, I'm constantly getting people saying, I'm interested in marine conservation, but I don't know where to start. I don't know even, what to do. What should I major in? All this stuff. And I'm like, okay, so that's, how I've gotten to where I am now is teaching people where to start on that journey. So
And that's great because getting that information on how to get started, what to do next, what to do, what the roadmap is for people interested in marine conservation, which we all should be, and we all should participate at some level, is very important. So I'm going to save a whole section for us to just kind of talk about that. So let's start with you and how you even got into, diving and when you started to actively take marine conservation, more intensely.
yeah, so I guess I can just kind of tell you my story. So I started diving when I was 12. My dad had been a scuba diver, and so he wanted to take me and my mom and my brother on trips to the Caribbean. I'm from Texas. So we got certified in the Blue Hole in New Mexico because I'm from North Texas. That was like the closest open water spot.
Wow.
Freezing. We went in the winter time. They had to pour hot water down our wetsuits for us to get in. So that was my first dive. And so we went a bunch of different places, Honduras, Cozumel, Aruba, Hawaii. And then I went to college down at Texas State University in San Marcos. And there was a gap there where I didn't dive for probably 5 years. And I got a degree there in advertising and communication studies. And so then after that, I kind of worked at some magazines, did ad work, and in Austin and then in Houston. And that's kind of when the economy crashed. So I wasn't really making that good of money. I didn't really like what I was doing at all. I felt like I was selling ads to people that, I didn't even know if the ads were going to really work. I felt like at that point, the magazines weren't starting to do as well because all the
Mm.
digital stuff was coming up. So I just thought, now is a time. I've always wanted to live abroad. Maybe I should go find out what it is I really want to do. So I got my dive master certification in a lake in Austin because I had read online that that was an easy job to get as an expat in Australia. so, so I got my dive master, and then I moved abroad to Sydney, and I was there for 6 or 7 months, and then moved up to Byron Bay, which is a little surf town, and then I got kind of swept into the backpacker lifestyle and moved to New Zealand after that. And then I felt like it was time to come home. So I came back to Texas, and I just was like, I miss the ocean. I mean, I had become so accustomed to it, just like getting in it all the time. I went through a breakup and I got in the ocean and just cried, and it healed me. I, spent so many happy times with my friends in the ocean. It had just become such a big part of my life. And so I thought, I can't stay in Texas. I need to go be back where the ocean is. So I came up with the plan to move to Key West, which is the southernmost island on the end of Florida.
Right.
And when I got there, I didn't really have a plan. So, I was just kind of like working as a dive master. And then I kept hearing about, I would go out to the bars afterwards with all the other, dive professionals. They were all talking about this program that was a marine environmental technology program at the college there. And I just got this weird feeling that it's what I needed to do. It was just kind of one of those moments in your life where you're like, I need to do that. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but I need to do it. So I got everything together, got my transcripts, and I did it. And I graduated from there, got my scientific diver certification, worked with Coral Restoration Foundation, and just fell in love with it. And then, I actually, whenever I moved to St. Petersburg, was going to start on a marine biology bachelor's degree, getting another bachelor's. And I just realized that wasn't really the path for me. I think I was doing it because that's what I thought everyone wanted me to do. And then I realized that I actually already had the skills that I could use for marine conservation. Although the communications and stuff working at the magazines wasn't really what I liked, I do love advertising, communications, obviously. I mean, my podcast and all that stuff. And so I just decided to channel it. I was like, what if I can use these skills I have to channel it towards something I love, which is the ocean and helping it and marine conservation. So that's kind of how I ended up here. It's a really long, winding road, I know, but
It's a very interesting one too, and happiness over everything. And one of the things you mentioned real quick about going into the ocean and feeling healed after a breakup, I can relate to it. I started diving during my separation before my divorce happened. A few of the people I know picked up diving or picked up that intense relationship with the ocean through breakups like that. It's very interesting. But yeah, the ocean heals, saltwater heals everything. And I love how you've been able to manifest your lifestyle with the skills that you've garnered over time. And that's why you're the mentor, because you have these experiences that have taken you through different paths, and you've kind of had to make calls along the way. Is this right? Is this not right? And that's why you can share that information. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. That is a very, very interesting path to how you got to where you are now, and still growing. So your podcast, your platform, Eco Conscious Diver, is kind of your primary channel for sharing that conservation information.
Yeah. I'd say it's like a marine conservation resource center. It's a
Mm-hmm.
business, but it's mainly educational resources. So it does have the podcast, which I'm in the middle of sort of rebranding. I haven't posted one in a little while, just to make sure that I'm giving the best information I can to everybody in the best way. So, but I have interviewed a lot of nonprofits that are doing great stuff in marine conservation on that. And then I created my online course, which is a complete introduction to marine conservation that has 2 certifications that are included. I also have a lot of free resources. I just got done creating a free webinar that's about how to use your unique skills for marine conservation. What else? There's some merch on the website.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
love how you make it relatable and pragmatic. I love how you shoot questions out there, or share information about, the basics. It all starts with having an interest to do it, regardless of what your career is, what your occupation is. If you're interested, definitely everyone seeing this, ecoconsciousdiver.com, at ecoconsciousdiver, right?
Yeah.
Across different platforms. Now, the work you do with marine conservation is so important. That's why I keep talking about it. But and I can also personally attest to your social media strategy and marketing skills, because you've helped me kind of align my brand and correctly. So I appreciate that, and probably that's a testimonial for you as well.
Thanks. Well, you took what I said and you ran with it. I mean, you've really developed this Divers Getting Coffee brand so quickly. It's awesome. I love seeing it.
We love it when great minds are working together. Real quick, still on the topic of Caitlin. Now, you went out, explored, had adventures, came back, and found the right place to stay to keep adventuring, keep the relationship with the ocean. What's the most interesting experience you've had on the water?
Underwater.
Or, yeah, in or around the ocean, diving, surface intervals, underneath. What's
Mhm.
the most memorable thing that comes to your mind?
Honestly, probably when we were in Honduras, and this was like back in high school, but I was diving with my brother and my dad.
Wow.
And we were like in this area that was notoriously sharky, but this like big bull shark came and he started like, you could see the outline of him, but he was huge. And so the dive master all of a sudden was like, okay, everybody don't, he's like, nobody move, and we're like, and our eyes are huge and like nobody's moving. And he's kind of, you could see the shadow of this giant shark like circling us. And all of a sudden, we don't see it anymore. And the dive master's like, everybody get out, everybody get out. And we're like, so, I mean, I'm like a high schooler, I'm like 16 or something. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God. And so we get out and we're on the boat and he's like, that's the biggest shark I've ever seen. Like, that was
Wow.
terrifying. And I've never seen a dive master get that scared. Like, but it was huge. I mean, just the shadow of the shark, it was really scary. But he just said that, there were a couple of bull sharks in that area that had a bad attitude and that
Hmm.
they would mess with you, if they came around, I guess, because they did shark dives and feeding there. So that probably has something to do with it. But anyway, not to give the listeners a bad view of sharks. All sharks are not scary, but that was a terrifying moment.
But it's great you share that, because just bull sharks have, well, they're called bull sharks for a reason. Kind of comes from their reputation of being aggressive, not with the intent to, with a sole single-minded intent to go hunt and kill humans. But yeah, if we're in their waters, they're like, huh, who are these guys? Are they interesting? Are they? But yeah,
Well, yeah, I mean, they're apex predators, and you
right.
have to respect that. I
That's
mean, you
that's a
don't go
great
up
point.
to a lion, or, if a lion starts circling you, you're not like, oh, let me put my arm out and see if it wants to sniff it. Like, you're like, okay, let me curl into a ball.
You said that exactly right. They are apex predators, and you don't walk up to a lion and say, "Hey, what's going on?" We have to respect that, but in general, obviously, like you were saying, saying that to scare people. But yeah, we should also have that respect for their space, and watch their behaviors, and folks that have contact with them daily or over long periods of time. tend to know sometimes they have individual, what's the word, personalities too, that
Yeah.
we need to kind of know and be watchful of. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's go back to ocean conservation. How did you, well, you had the relationship, but you started growing. At what point did you, how should I phrase it? When did you start taking it more seriously than the average diver? Because it's a very, the information you share, the work you do, the time and resource that you put into the business to promote it and create the awareness, it's not average. It's more intense. What was that trigger for you?
Honestly, the information. I mean, just whenever I did that program in Key West, I learned more than I ever had about the ocean before. And there were so many moments that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I never knew about this. And I need other people to know about this too, and it completely changed me, just even down to little conservation efforts that you make in your everyday life. That being from Texas, no one talked about swapping out straws for metal straws. Like this was all new to me, and I just thought, if this is new to me, then especially the people from where I'm from in Texas, they don't know about this stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
them seeing it on my social media might be the only time they've ever seen it. And so that was my initial thought, was like, those of us who live coastally maybe have heard about this stuff more, or maybe not. But I mean, there is a lot of people, the majority of people, on the planet don't live coastally. So how can I get this information to these people and show them that there's stuff going on? I mean, the massive bleaching events that have happened the last couple of years, the species die-offs, which have just cascading effects. I mean, when one species dies off and it's not made to be a big deal, it's like, that's terrible. I can't believe that this isn't making national news when we have a species die-off.
Yeah, it's
It's
crazy.
crazy.
And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, it just shows you like how far disconnected we are from nature.
And it's great that you're sharing that information in a very palatable, very digestible, very relatable way. Like you mentioned earlier, Eco Conscious Diver is kind of a resource information center. You have definitely a lot of information on there, so everyone should definitely check that out. And yeah, like when one species dies off, and we worry about memes, for example. Maybe we should set those things, set those kinds of information as memes. And I love what you do with the reels and the stories, and it just makes it it makes me stop and like, other than picking trash at the beach, what else could I be doing, and that's great.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
and just one point before we move on, how I said there was a lot of like aha moments that I had. Those are actually the majority of what I put into my online course that I created, were like all those really astounding moments that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this, So I kind of put them all into one thing that people can digest.
that's awesome. And you have experiences from all over the world, from down under, from you were in Southeast Asia for a while, from all over the Caribbean, and that's a lot of great information. Actually, real quick, while we're on this topic of global experience, where's that one dive site that's on your bucket list that you haven't been to yet? Or I guess, yeah, what are your top two favorite dives, either one you've done or one that you are looking forward to doing at some point?
So my favorite dive of all time is, the Great Barrier Reef. I
Oh,
mean, it seems like so cheesy because I feel like that's on everyone's bucket list. But I dove it with my parents when they came to visit me in Australia, and it was just unbelievable. I mean, me and my dad had this moment with the turtle where he was like in between us and we're kind of dancing around him. It was just like unbelievable. But I'd have to say a dive that I've really been itching to do is in Iceland. They have a dive where you can go literally in between two tectonic plates. So
so
you can literally like touch two continents at one time while you're underwater. I think that's so cool.
That's definitely one of the. I think a lot of people have that on their bucket list, and for a good reason. Easily up there in my personal favorites, personally too. Just the sheer awesomeness of realizing, this piece of land is going all the way into into Mongolia, all the way on the other side of Europe, and this one kind of reaches America. That's yeah, you definitely have good taste in diving.
Thanks. What's your top place?
I think Iceland is probably one of the best. One of my favorite memories or favorite dive sites. There isn't that much to see in terms of wildlife. There's not that much really, but just the sheer awesomeness of being between those two tectonic plates is just mind blowing in its own way. And Iceland is just a place I really like. One place I haven't that I definitely want to go check out at some point is Truk Lagoon for the wrecks, the history. Um, yeah, I mean, Truk in Micronesia. It's in Micronesia, I think.
I haven't
Just a
heard of
lot.
that. I'm gonna have to go look it up.
Yeah, so a lot of major naval battles in World War II between um, Japanese and American forces, and sides aligning on both sides happen in that area. So there are wrecks from Japanese Zeros and a lot of naval warships and supply ships, and it's probably one of the largest concentration of um, wrecks from falling from battle. Mostly fallen from battle, somewhere probably relocated, but it's pretty much a grave site of remnants of World War II, the conflict,
Yeah.
sadly, that happened in the Pacific. A lot of history. Some of them still have live ordnance on them. Some of them still have, actual. This is a little macabre, but actual remains of sailors and maybe fighters strapped into your seat, or what's left of them um,
Wow,
underwater.
haunted.
So, yeah, it's pretty intense. I've seen researched a few of the wrecks. I know a few friends have been there. It just looks really amazing, and it feels like just going back and reliving. Well, not to an extent, reliving the history from that era. So
Yeah,
that's one place I'd love to go to at some point.
that's interesting because I've always thought about speaking of World War II, like my grandfather was in Pearl Harbor, and so I've always thought about apparently there's wrecks there that you can dive
Yeah, yeah.
that are harbor.
Those would be cool. I doubt if I don't think the divers are allowed to dive the actual monument anymore. There's kind of like a central area with by the harbor, but yeah, there are other wrecks in the area that you can definitely dive in. Yeah, and experience it. Wrecks have always kind of intrigued me, um,
The
but yeah,
history, it's like it's so cool to hear about the story of a wreck and then go dive it and experience it. It's like a
yeah,
time capsule.
that's definitely true. How's it diving in? Now you're in Fort Lauderdale, closer to Miami, kind of on the southeastern corner of Florida. How's the diving out there?
Oh, it's good so far. So yeah, I've done two shore dives, which is great. I mean, $10 to go diving for an hour and a
Can't
half.
beat that.
I know, and the reef is like right here. I've been really pleasantly surprised. I just thought, since I lived in the Keys, that I probably wouldn't like anything else as good ever again. But I have to say, I feel like it's just as good here. And today I did my first rec. There's like a rec track or
Hmm.
they call it the rec track. It goes like all the way from Fort Lauderdale down to like Key Largo. And so I did like one of the first ones. And I mean, it was crystal clear.
Wow. Was it
Yeah.
cold?
No, I mean, I was just wearing skins because I didn't want my BCD to like scratch me. But there was a girl that was just in her swimsuit.
That's crazy. Um, I
Yeah.
I love that. I actually started looking at Jupiter, Florida. I think it's Jupiter, where they have a bunch of shark dives going on the other day. Maybe it's a couple hours north of where you are, I think. Um, but yeah, you also take the schedules align, you also kind of give tours and in the area. I
Do
noticed
I?
on your website. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. So I am doing just on a first come first serve basis, like small courses if anyone's interested. I do offer a dive guide, and then I actually just paired up with a dive shop to host eco events. So we're looking at
that's
putting those on the calendar here pretty soon, so that I might also include some PADI project aware specialties on that too.
that's awesome. And can you tell us a little bit more, or tell me personally a little bit more about those events? Just kind of what the typical flow and what you're covering in those events are going to be.
Yeah, so the instructor would actually be either me or actually my favorite professor from the Keys College has moved up here too. His name is Dr. Alex Brilski. So, Dr. B has a wealth of knowledge. I've asked him if he can talk about shark ecology, um, artificial reefs in terms of wrecks, especially because we have the wreck trek here. So we can talk about all the good that that's doing and then go dive those. And then for me, myself personally, it would be more of the conservation certifications, like the coral reef conservation specialty, fish identification, and project aware certs.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And sure is I guess my next question is, I know in the dive community, obviously we are a little more connected with the ocean than maybe most other sports or adventures or occupations. In Florida specifically, is it fairly common in the community? Ocean awareness and conservation and things like that. Is that something that's typical, or does it need a little more? Obviously, it always needs a little more awareness for people. But what's it like out there? Just
You
another
know,
way.
Florida is interesting. And I feel like I can say this because I am from Texas. But we get an interesting mix in Florida because, there are a lot of people that move here for the ocean because they're ocean lovers. And people that are studying marine biology. There's one of the top universities here in Miami for that. And so you get a lot of people around that are interested in that sort of thing and conservation. But we also get a lot of people from the South who migrate down to South Florida, who are a little more like good old boy type. They like fishing, hunting, these
Yeah,
types of things. So they gravitate towards spearfishing or deep sea fishing a
right.
lot, which is, so it's a very interesting mix because you've got those people that are like, let's go out and catch anything. And then you've got other people that are like, don't eat fish, like, don't you dare order that grouper sandwich. But so I've definitely experienced both. I do think it's a good, teaching opportunity, because you
Hmm.
get a good mixture of those people on the boats. And a lot of what you get, every boat you go on in Florida, there's going to be some snowbirds on it who are interested in learning about
Yeah.
the ocean. And so if you're there and you want to talk about it, you can teach someone.
That's awesome. And it's funny. It's one of those things where I don't have anything against people that spearfish or fish in general, as long as it's kind of done sustainably and responsibly. It's just something I'm personally not interested in. Um, but I can appreciate what the appeal they find in it. Is it possible for someone to be an avid good old boy that's into the hunting and the tracking and the fishing, and still be sort of a conservationist? Is that a thing? Is that
Absolutely. I mean, for as long as humans have been on the earth, tribal communities have hunted fish and eaten them for dinner. But the thing is, I mean, like the tournaments and stuff where it's like who can get the biggest fish. A lot of times that's problematic. Just as an
hmm,
example, because so if they're trying to see who can get the biggest grouper, the largest groupers that are egg bearing are women. female. They're not women, they're female groupers.
Right.
And so, basically they're going out and hunting all of the egg bearing fish in that group, in that species. And so if you kill all of the female groupers, there's not going to be any more groupers. You know what I mean? So
Wow.
there are some practices like that that are definitely unsustainable. But I do also know people that love spearfishing, but they go out and they'll either catch lionfish, which is an invasive species, and they're very good in tacos. Uh, or they'll catch a species that they know the population is doing well, and then obviously they take it home and they either freeze it and they have it later for their family, or they have it that night, and that's absolutely sustainable. I think it's just being aware and doing the research in your area to know how the fish populations are doing, asking a local about that sort of stuff, and not just going out there and being like, let's try to get the biggest fish, and let's not even, let's just get as many as we can for the photo. That's the issue,
Yeah.
I think.
Or checking in with conservation mentors like yourself, because that's something I actually never. When you just mentioned, it just made sense. It clicked. Like, oh wait, yeah, that's kind of true. If you're killing off the largest groupers that are the egg bearing ones, then in a few years you're probably not gonna be left with a lot of groupers to catch.
Yeah.
And that's why the information, that's why the awareness is very important. Like you said, there are this activity can be done as long as it's sustainable research, making sure you understand the local ecosystem and not disrupt it or destroy it.
Yeah. And I don't think that people want to these people aren't like, oh, let's go destroy the environment. That's not what they're doing. They just don't have the information, so how can we educate people on these things and just make them aware? I mean, I had no idea, but now that I know, I'm like, oh my God.
And that's the thing, and the tools we use are making humans, well, certainly over efficient for the natural displacement of the biological ecosystem. So it makes it just, it's just kind of unfair. But I get it. Like you said, a lot of these folks don't start out with the intention of, let's just screw everything up. It's just, well, I love what I do and I've been doing it for generations, or we've been doing it for a while and nothing has happened. But then we're just getting really good at it that we're kind of killing everything off. So it definitely makes sense. And even just with commercial fishing, there's just so much of that going on that, like personally for me, one of my rationalizations is that, if I really wanted to get fish, I can just go to the store and get it. And hopefully that's actually something I want to ask you about. But maybe once in a while, but it just doesn't appeal to me. But I get it when others like it or want to do it. But, like I always just tell them, if you want to do it, make sure you just kind of do a little research, talk to people, make sure you're doing it right, and make sure you're not doing more harm than good, for a little bit of a fulfillment that's gonna really not be conclusive.
Just thinking that, I mean, that's so true. I know a lot of conservationists will say veganism is the only way we can truly be sustainable. But, as I said, islanders, tribal communities have been eating meat forever. And, I think a little bit of research goes a long way. So, if you are going to eat meat, at my house, we make sure that we're getting, wild caught, or trying to, like there's a really nice guy at our local farmers market that has his own sustainable farm that does, carbon sequestering. So they move the animals, and so it's not ruining the land, and they have great chicken, and, that's where we get it. I do realize that comes from a place of privilege. A lot of the more expensive, or a lot of the, sustainable options are more expensive. And that, holds true everywhere. I mean, even you look at vegetables, and, the ones that aren't using any toxic chemicals are more expensive, right? But it's just trying to do the best that you can within your price range and with what you've got, you know?
And that's true, and that's something that doesn't make me feel too guilty about it. Well, let me rephrase that. My diet is basically just meat. So like when we started getting more conscious about like veganism and the harm that commercial farming and fishing and things like that are doing to the community, I started, I was at a place where I started feeling like I am not giving up this meat. But like you said, you can always make sure to do a little bit research and go for things that are, rare, a little more in healthy environments and less destructive processes. But it does also come with a price. So now I feel like I'm personally getting to that balance where I, do what I can within my budget and just kind of make it work and also keep learning about it. But that was actually what I wanted to ask you about earlier when I mentioned commercial fishing. Um, why is that? Well, obviously there things that commercials, for lack of a better way to say it, the processes that give us the most catch, for example, are so commercial and so operationalized that, well, it's just cheaper to catch a whole lot of stuff. Even some of the collateral damage to other species of marine life, that it's scalable and it's just cheaper, it's better in returns. But what would you tell someone that isn't giving up fish or meat or whatnot, but still trying to support better ways, or businesses with better ways to fish and sustainable ways of catching food for humans? Because, well, that's kind of part of our diet. So, even if some of us don't use it or eat it, a good chunk of people still are using it. Obviously things like shark fin soup are off the table. No discussion about things like that, but just the regular tilapia or salmon or something like that. What are your thoughts on the industry in general?
Like how people can choose what they're gonna buy.
Right.
I'd say honestly, I mean, check your labels, and if you're not sure, you can always now pretty much all the supermarkets have, the different brands on their website. So you could even check beforehand and see how it's caught sustainably. Most of the time, if these companies are doing the right thing, it's going to be plastered all over their website because that's their selling point. um, so yeah, there's that. Aside from trying to buy sustainable options, supporting programs that are doing things to help our ocean. I have recently become a Blue Parks ambassador for Marine Conservation Institute. And that is because I feel like one of the best ways that we can help our fisheries is by creating marine protected areas and actually holding people accountable for them. And that doesn't mean like telling fishermen you can't fish anywhere, near where you live. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose is to protect areas that are really, really rich in diverse species. And then studies have shown that if they protect areas, then the areas around them tend to get bigger fish populations. So if we're protecting areas, then the fishermen will actually have more fish to fish. Anyway, it's kind of like, we're helping the ecosystem along just by sectioning off an area and making it a no-take zone. And so that's what they're doing at Marine Conservation Institute, is having these blue parks programs where you can nominate places to be blue parks. And it's places that the government is actually doing a really good job and holding people accountable. So it's pretty interesting program, but
That's interesting. So protect the source, and what comes out of it will be, enough to keep catching. And that's interesting. The Marine Conservation Institute, right? And what's the criteria for picking the places that become protected? Are there other signs that they kind of look at to choose those spots? Maybe like somewhere that meets pulls in a bunch of different types of fish together, or how does that
um,
go?
I think a lot of it has to do with I don't know the exact formula of how they choose, but I do know a lot of it has to do with like the no take zones, and it having to do with like rich species and also how the government actually protects it. Because there have been a lot of governments in the past that have created these marine protected areas. And they're really just because it looks good on paper and it's something that that country can hold up and say, look at us, we created a marine protected area. And it's really just for tourism or, to say that they're doing something good, but then no one goes back and checks these areas or makes sure that fishermen actually aren't going into them. So they're not monitored at all. So that's a big part of it, is making sure that the governments are actually holding people accountable and have, a security team or, have jobs people to actually take care of that area and issue citations if people are not, upholding it. So,
And is this a national thing, or is
it's
there some kind of
worldwide.
part? Oh, wow.
Worldwide, yeah, yeah. And so they actually, on their website, it's pretty interesting. They have like a whole map of all of the places that have been nominated as blue parks. So they're the best in the world at marine protected areas. And it has like, you can hover over it and it will tell you all about those different areas. So,
Wow. That's pretty
yeah,
awesome.
it's a pretty cool
And
program.
that's cool. I came here to learn today, and thanks for sharing that. It's something I'll definitely look up myself. Um, where what's your vision for, well, for lack of a better word to say, and other things being equal, what are like the first top two things you kind of want to see um, with practices and behavior that people can do that either can help conservation or protect the ocean or keep the health of the oceans in good shape in our daily lives, that we probably, something we haven't, maybe we probably are not aware of, that you think you want to share with us?
So in your daily life, supporting businesses that are keeping ecological practices. I
Hmm.
mean, that's something, even if you're not in the ocean every day, killing invasive species or planting coral or anything like that, if we're voting with our dollars every single day. So the best way that you can vote for a bright future is by doing your due diligence, due diligence on products. Look at their website, find out how their employee practices are, find out where they're sourcing their stuff from. Do they have a solar powered plant? If they do, that's freaking awesome. Let's support these companies that are doing good.
No, that's a good point.
So,
That's a good point. You make a very good point about, we're voting every day where we spend our money and time um, and effort, so supporting the right organizations, supporting folks like yourself that promote and share the awareness and information we need to know kind of what to do and how to kind of work it, and also encouraging others to get involved and uh, get serious about these important matters is definitely a very good look. And you got me all riled up about it. I think I'm going to sign up for a course myself, because
oh, awesome.
it's a lot of really good information, and you make it seem very pragmatic. It's not so extreme. Obviously, you kind of have to build up to it. But I feel like I can relate with what you're saying, and that's great. Obviously, other people have good information as well, but I just felt like I can relate with yours. Um, what's the one advice you have for anyone getting started, either in diving or, well, not in, either in diving or marine conservation? What's the one piece of advice that you probably got when you started that you think they should really just know at this point?
Hmm. I don't know. That's a difficult one. I feel like, my number one advice in getting started is just to get started. So many people spend too much time, like researching, making sure everything's perfect. You don't need to make sure everything's perfect in life, you just need to do things and then see what happens, so don't be afraid of diving. I know a lot of people are afraid of diving. I get a lot of questions about that in my messages, just about oh, I'm scared about this or that. And, try it. Just go try it. You're going to be happy that you did, and it's beautiful and you'll fall in love with it.
Hey, that is solid advice. I got to tell you, that's something, that's a philosophy I personally kind of try to manifest myself. It's don't wait for things to be perfect. Don't wait for all the T's to be crossed and I's be dotted. Well, at some point, you're going to have to just pull the trigger and shoot from the hip, try it and learn as you go. When I started diving, honestly, I could barely swim. Like, I just went and I signed up and, I want to do it and I figure it out. And over time, I actually took time to go to adult swim classes to kind of just learn how to swim properly,
That's awesome. That's good. It's never too late to learn anything.
Absolutely.
I guess that's another piece of advice. It's never too late to learn anything, I mean, we only have one life. So if there's anything you want to do, now's the time to do it,
That's awesome. Now it's time to do it. Now is the time to get involved with conservation in any way that you can. Anyone watching this, definitely want to research, get more information and learn. And well, at some point just start acting. And no better person to tell you how to do it than Caitlin herself. So where can we find you online?
Yeah, so my personal Instagram and Facebook is C. Caitlin McCall. And we'll probably put those in the show notes. And then
Yep.
My business is Eco Conscious Diver on Instagram and Facebook. The website is www.eco-consciousdiver.com. And that's pretty much it.
Absolutely. I'll definitely add all the information to the comments and to the description. Yeah, descriptions on YouTube. We're going to put the information in there. Anyone watching this, you're going to get it.
Oh, yeah,
and Caitlin is not hard to find.
And
What's
the
that?
podcast.
And the podcast.
The podcast, which we'll be relaunching soon, is you can just put Eco Conscious Diver into whatever podcast service that you use to listen. I'm on
That's awesome.
on all of them.
Well, I really want to tell you that I appreciate your time joining us today. Actually started thinking about coming to Florida at some point to dive soon. When I'm coming, I'll definitely hit you up to let me know all the good local spots are to go check them out.
We'll take you diving. By then I'll know of all the spots.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Any questions for me?
What is your vision for divers getting coffee?
Wow, that's a good question. Right now, it's having a community that is able to share information, not just with ourselves as divers, but also to share information with non-divers about just the lifestyle of diving. Some of us do it professionally, some do recreationally, some are working in near coast spaces like conservation and teaching and stuff like that. But I just wanted to have a platform or build a community of divers having diver talk and sharing information. And because typically I with my group of divers, when we're meeting up diving, and we're most likely talking about diving. We should probably start talking about less diving things. But yeah, taken from your advice, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. When I started this, I had no idea, no intention, no vision. It was really just over time I've connected with divers from here to Florida to down under to Singapore, and yeah, we say hi in passively, but we never actually sit down and talk about how did you get into diving? What do you want to do next? What's in your list? And things like that. And I just started having that conversation. And specifically at the time when I started, it was more. At the time, I was thinking, I forget what the conversation was, but I was like, oh wait, I've actually gone diving with one other black diver, but I actually know quite a few of them. But I knew from the start that it's not a platform that's specifically about choosing a demographic. It's really just about talking to all divers from across the ocean tribe. But I started with that, and just been kind of fine-tuning as I go, not taking it too seriously, but also, having due diligence to engage people and share information, learn, and also help others kind of start appreciating it as much as we do. Since we started, actually I had a few people that's tried out Discover Scuba. I had this guy that joined the IG Live a couple times. Next IG Live was going like, "Hey man, I'm at the dive shop right now. I'm doing my open water." I'm like, "Whoa, okay." So
It's
that's cool.
awesome.
So
But yeah, the best way to get people involved in marine conservation is to get people in the water and seeing it themselves.
mhm.
I mean, that's why marine conservation even started, was Jacques Cousteau actually filming it and putting it on everyone's TVs in their homes.
Yeah,
That's where it started.
that's you can't appreciate what you can't what you don't see, I guess. Yeah, you can see it on TV and in videos, but there's a different feeling when you experience it firsthand. Yeah, so Divers Getting Coffee is really just hopefully we'll see how it evolves, but it's trying to nurture a community, build a community of divers, diverse divers from different backgrounds, different spaces in the dive community, talking, sharing information, sharing experiences, and hopefully influencing others that are interested in uh, marine in diving or other types of marine sports and adventures. At some point, I do want to try to sponsor folks that want to, but don't necessarily have the means to, especially young kids. Young kids and haven't really figured out how to strategize that yet, but that will be something I really just looking back at my childhood. It was some for me. It was less of a. It was more of a you just don't do that kind of thing. But encouraging that the next generation to get in, experience it, and also just let that bloom into whatever it comes to is something I find. I find fulfillment in, and I hope it's useful to them, and in turn useful to the community as a whole. So
I think that's
that's kind of the
incredible.
plan.
I can't wait to see that happen. That really hypes me up. It's incredible. I love the community building that you're doing here, and I just think it's great. I'm happy to be a part of it. I feel blessed that you had me on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No, thank you for blessing us with your time. It's been such a great chat. I'm definitely going to be hitting you up soon for some more strategy talks as well. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. So thank you, Caitlin, for your time. Looking forward to collaborating with you at some point at different levels. And I will be actually signing up and learning about marine conservation myself to kind of get it going. So
Awesome.
enjoy the rest of the evening. I know you went diving today. You're probably knackered at this point, so it's good to
Ready
probably a
to
good time to relax. Yeah,
switch from coffee to a beer.
I I hear you. Divers happy hour.
Yeah.
All right, Caitlin, such a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you so much for having me. See ya.
Thank you for coming. Bye.